Hi, everyone. All right. Can I get a raise of hands if you've ever come across this post on Twitter? Not a lot. But basically, this post talks about the state of how depth of detail and how everything is losing character. And basically, everything is starting to look the same, right? Have you noticed how design has become increasingly repetitive, soulless, and generic? Every website, every logo, every social media post feels like it's built on a template. Maybe we're getting lazier, or maybe the world is moving too fast. But we seem to be focused on just the functionality, on just getting things done. See, there's no denying that form follows function, and function is king. But we've gotten so stuck on optimizing for function that we've forgotten to nurture form. See, fulfilling utility is one thing, but achieving it with beauty is another. Minimalism, for example, was supposed to be all about clarity and purpose. Instead, we've compromised it, and now it just feels manufactured. This mass-produced corruption of minimalism has reduced our creative efforts to just functionality and lacks identity. And it's left us surrounded with objects and places that lack soul, that neither tell a story that nor evoke any emotion. I mean, look at most of the cafes around you, right? They all feel incredibly similar. And I recently read this article by Kyle Cheka, and he highlights the same problem of bland Instagrammable cafes. And after reading this article, I realized that I wasn't alone in this thought. Also, through Twitter, I came across the Culture Critic. Basically, Culture Critic tweets about the state of architecture, and he compares the architecture of the present to the past. And he argues that in a quest for simplicity, we have lost the wealth of expression. And I couldn't agree more. In other words, everything is becoming vanilla. Um, Once I started to notice this pattern of repetitiveness, I just couldn't unsee it. That feeling that once you become conscious of something, you start seeing it more and more, the beta manner phenomena. In automobiles, in rebrandings, in architecture, in just furniture and interior, I noticed this depth of detail in almost everything I consumed. And it really troubled me. I believe that good design cannot be rushed, right? It must flow. And every time we need ideas, Pinterest isn't the only answer. I think that's probably one of the reasons that most of our designs are similar, is that we've all been using the same mood board, right? The same inspiration. Like, how can the output be different if the mood board itself is so similar, right? So we need to look beyond our digital screens. Like, we need to invest more time, and we need to dig deeper for ideas. Today, I want to talk about and share a branding project that completely shifted my perspective as a designer. And I want to share my journey with you about how art and culture inspired me to be a better designer. In 2021, I worked on this branding project, and it made me realize that design is so much more than just solving problems and fulfilling functions. It made me fall in love with the process of creation. Hi, I'm Shantanu Kumar, and I lead a small creative agency called Skch Design Studios back in India. Lately, I've been traveling a lot. I love to travel. I love food. I love talking to people. And I love learning the history about the places I visit. And besides my design agency, I also have a YouTube channel where I document my travels and creative projects. So post-COVID, after the difficult lockdown, Sikkim was one of the first places I traveled to. How many of you have heard of this place called Sikkim before? If you're from India, just put your hand down. Yeah, literally nobody. So Sikkim is a small but beautiful state in the northeast region of India, and it shares its borders with Nepal, Bhutan, and China. And that's one of the reasons that the culture there is so much more different than what you typically expect to be Indian, right? As a fresh digital nomad, I stayed in an Airbnb there. I enjoyed the gorgeous views of Mount Kanchenjunga. And I worked on my freelance projects. And I remember just one afternoon, I was shooting a YouTube video in one of the cafes there. And the owner came up to me. He was probably intrigued by my cameras. And now I don't know whether it was the universe eavesdropping or just the law of attraction. I was approached by this guy to work on a brand identity for a new initiative called Sikkim Coffee. It was an easy yes, like Sikkim and coffee, like how could I say no? But it was also the biggest project I had taken up at that time, and it felt like a big responsibility. This project allowed me to channel my passion into something meaningful and impactful. And it was basically like a passion project that I was getting paid for. Before I dive into the details of the design process, let's understand the goals of this project, right? So it wasn't just any other coffee brand. The main vision of this project was to make Sikkim into a coffee state. Sikkim's economy primarily relies on two factors. So that's tourism and public sector. And using coffee, we wanted to add another dimension to the state's economy and create more opportunities within the state. Notably, Sikkim is also India's first organic state, and all farming done in it is organic. And this term organic Sikkim is widely recognized across the country. And yeah, we wanted to leverage this reputation of organic Sikkim to build the coffee brand. We also aimed to use Sikkim coffee to represent the culture of the state and help the world learn about the state. Sikkim is still comparatively undiscovered, and there are not a lot of resources available online. So I decided to extend my stay and spend a lot of time talking to the people there, just looking beyond the digital, right? So I explored a lot of monasteries, the traditional elements. I looked closer to the architecture there. I looked at scripts, the language, and basically any means of their expression. And based on my research, I had three key observations or problems that I needed to tackle through my design. First, the state was a blend of cultures, very similar to Singapore in that sense. And it was heavily influenced by Nepalese and Tibetan cultures. It was almost like a double-edged sword in that sense, because at one end I had this vast library of cultures as research material, but to find something at the intersection of it, to find a symbol that every Sikkimese could resonate with was incredibly difficult. And in search of this symbol, I came across 8 lucky signs. At first, it felt like a great idea because it was easy to derive a logo from here. And each of them have really deep meaning. So we could have used that to build the brand upon, right? But the problem was that every other small business in the state was using these. So it felt repetitive and it wasn't unique, and we were back to square one. Lastly, Mount Kanchenjunga, Sikkim being home to this mountain, felt like an obvious choice. But I wasn't really going to make a logo of mountain and 2 coffee beans, and that wasn't really, I'm not that guy. So it was too lazy, it was too obvious, and any brand that grew coffee in the mountains could have used it. It needed to be different. I remember one time I had gone on a trek with some of the locals there towards the borders of Sikkim and Nepal. It's about 3,500 meters, sorry. And the guide was telling me that we would be really lucky if we encountered a red panda. Now, I had no prior knowledge about this animal before. But once I learned that this was the state animal of Sikkim, and it just felt like a perfect fit. Besides being the official state animal, there were a lot of reasons it felt, yeah, I know, it's adorable. If you just go back and look at red panda videos, it's super cute. It was the best part of the research. Yeah, so there were a lot of reasons that it felt right? The Indian variant of red panda, there's a Chinese variant and there's an Indian variant. But the Indian variant of red panda is exclusive to the Himalayan range, and it felt like a perfect symbol for Sikkim coffee. It's an endangered species, so there's less than 10,000 of them remaining. By choosing red panda, we not only found a mascot that embodies the spirit of Sikkim and its culture, but we also aim to raise awareness to the preservation of this important species. Now that I had the mascot, I needed an art style and some direction for the brand. So I delved deeper into the culture, explored monasteries and different forms of art, and I came across this really fascinating art form called thangka. Now, the thangka painting is usually done on a silk canvas, and it's all about attention to detail. Each of them is filled with stories and lessons to be learned from. And it's so precise and intricate that each of them is very unique in its own way. So this essence of attention to detail and storytelling is something that I wanted to capture in the brand's identity. The second form of art I came across was Tibetan calligraphy. Now, this is almost like a lost form of art. It's only, I noticed it in prayer wheels inscribed in the religious establishments there. But not a lot of people practice it now. And there's not a lot of resources. It's not a font that I can download off Google, right? Like similar to the red panda, this was an endangered form of art. So similar to the Japanese language, there are multiple scripts and styles of writing in the Sikkimese culture. Most of my friends know how to speak the traditional languages, but not many of them know how to write it. Visual representation of culture is much more difficult to preserve, and it's often lost earlier than the oral ones. And I wanted the brand to preserve this form of art. So if you look closer at the calligraphy, you would see there's a stamp of the artist that the artist used to mark as their signature. And apart from representing the identity of the signature, stamps are also used to mark the origin of a place. So I found this concept really interesting. And this layout of calligraphy on top and the stamp below it became the foundation for the design. This is a little breakdown of me just trying to explore the red panda. The difficult challenges were that I had to condense all its features and reduce it to a mark that was scalable and yet recognizable. So after doing a lot of iterations, I realized there were 5 patches, 2 on the cheeks, 2 above the eyes, and 1 on the nose that were distinct to this animal. So I retained those, and taking inspiration from the Thangka paintings, I tried to incorporate these curves to give it a more traditional look that made the ears and the eyes. Then I moved on to the calligraphy. Now, this was probably the most difficult part because I was completely new to this language. I did not know the script, and obviously there were not a lot of resources available online. So I had to take a reference from a lot of previous calligraphies. And also consult like a few experts that were still practicing it. I won't dive into the details, a lot of technicalities behind it. But if you know calligraphy, and calligraphy is traditionally done with ink, right? And ink flows on paper in a certain way. And to replicate that flow on digital was the most challenging part. But after a lot of repetitions and a lot of trials, I finally got it right. And this became the word mark for the brand. So this calligraphy spells out the word Sikkim. So that's S, E, K, E, and Ma. So that's Sikkim. That became the word mark for the brand. This is a more polished look at the typography. And then this brought together with the red panda design, this became the combination mark for the brand. Since this Sikkim Coffee project, I've enjoyed design so much more. And I actively take up projects that allow me to learn about different cultures. There's multiple solutions to this problem of mass production and repetitive design. And I found that culture was my source of inspiration and my answer to saving design from being repetitive, right? What I basically want to say is that, if we put too much importance on the form and not enough importance on the form of it, then what's stopping us from having a dystopian future that looks like blocks of stainless steel? Like if you Google futuristic cities, like blocks are all stainless steel, right? I don't want to live in that sort of city. Yeah, so it's been about a year since the brand has launched, and it's quickly become one of the most popular coffee shops in the state. And among the youth of Sikkim, people drink it with pride, the coffee from their own state. Yeah, so I started my design agency soon after this project, and the lessons I learned during this project became the core values of Skch Design Studio. The first lesson was that culture is all about people, and so is design. Like people are at the center of it. Understanding culture has helped me understand people better, and thus helped me in becoming a better designer. Second, we are stuck in this echo chamber of design being influenced by other designs. If you look at art, art is always inspired by life, right? Art is not inspired by other art. But we are stuck in this echo chamber of design being influenced by other designs, and we need to look at real world for inspiration. The third lesson, and the most important, is that admiration of beauty is one of the most human experiences. Like, all of us admire starry nights and sunsets. Like, who does not like that? So when solving problems, that we must remember that beauty is also a function. I truly believe that design must have a soul that resonates and inspires. Otherwise, AI is already here. And I want to leave you with this quote that I feel articulates my thought very well, and it can act as a compass the next time you're stuck in a creative block. If you want to be a better designer, study the world. Thank you.